Hello and welcome to AZAAZ, Ask Zenatta Anything About Zoho. This is Volume 1, Issue Number 3, and I am Brett Martin.
I'm Tyler Colt, and with us we've got Josh Oliver and Greg Belknap, two of our kind of superstar people on the back end that run a lot of our development ops, and so we brought them in as this is our weekly show to essentially answer all the different questions that you ask us across YouTube and on our podcast. So I think with that, guys, should we just get right on into it?
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Right into it.
Sweet. Alrighty, we have a first question here from Ria, basically asking, I'm new to Zoho projects. I'm using CRM for a while. I've run into a problem with projects that we're thinking might have a simple solution. So they've created project templates for kind of a standard project their company goes through all the time. Then they also have a task automation workflow rule that will assign the task to the project owner by default. The challenge is that what they're seeing is that when they're creating projects from the template, this automation is not happening, right? And so those tasks are not being set to match the project owner. And I think, guys, this is just a case of the templates don't trigger workflows, right? When it's creating those tasks in mass for the project. So you might need a different type of automation here. You could run one based on the creation of a project, right? And maybe have some code that you might need a little delay so all the tasks could get created. And then you could run a function that will assign that owner to each of the tasks within that project. But I think, guys, that would probably be the best approach, right?
Yeah, I think so. There is sort of a recent addition is macros in Zoho projects, which effectively are just buttons that again, like if you finish and then you come back and just select all those tasks and then say run this macro on all of them, and then have it work.
Kind of just as part of the kickoff process. You're thinking like when you create it, just go ahead and run that step too.
Or a scheduled function that pulls tasks that are like a waiting for status or something.
All right, next question. So BeatZ has asked through Club Zenatta for quotes. We have product variants of each service and optional offers that can be added. By default in CRM, they need to add the product for each variant in the products module. And having no physical products but services, is it worth using Zoho Inventory or a custom module to make it easier for our users? Or will product categories help in this? So essentially, you have two different routes you can go. If quick answer is if you plan on invoicing through Zoho Books, go ahead and just use Zoho Books products because that's obviously going to feed into that invoice or estimate if you plan on going that route. So you're going to need it in there anyways. If you don't plan on using Zoho Books for the invoicing or quoting process, then you could go ahead and just use the CRM products. And at either route you go, you are going to need to create a specific, unique product for every variant, because that variant is going to need to show up on the invoice. Tyler, Greg, any thoughts you guys have on how maybe product categories could help in that? I don't see how product categories.
Even with the categories, you're still going to need to have an individual product for each variant, and that would actually be the same inside of inventory. So in inventory, they have what are called product groups. So let's say you had a t-shirt in small, medium, large. Those would be like the variants. It's still actually going to create an individual product with its own SKU for each of those like types of shirt. So that's kind of unavoidable across the board. And you kind of would track inventory differently and price them differently. And so it kind of makes sense. Product categories might help. If you wanted to track it on the back end, you could add like a primary product with other products and then have a lookup field to say like this is a variant of that, but it almost seems like you don't get much value from doing it that way. Categories might be useful for reporting though at the end of the day if you want to group them up.
Yeah.
Yep. And as with almost all of our answers to these kinds of questions, if you've got the resources and the know-how, or at least the resources to get somebody who does have the know-how, you could use custom scripting, or you could create like a variance, custom module that would like link up to your products and then instead of using the native create invoice, you'd run some special function that would look at, well, what's the variant on this and blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And, but obviously that would have a lot of upfront costs of trying to get that functionality exactly in place there. So I think you're better off in the long, you're better off just making lots of products.
Yeah, because each variant's going to need their own SKU, and if you want to track those or maybe price those SKUs differently, you have to have a product record to assign those values. So, yeah, unfortunately, create new products for every variant. But
as
it's gonna work
services,
out.
they might not need a SKU. I mean, that's where the custom module could come in if they're just services and it's checkbox. I mean, there's a couple. It's not using invoices. If you're just using CRM, like you said, Josh, if they're using books, it's one thing. If not, it's another. And
maybe you could consider, like, if you're on a subform, having another field in the subform that selects the variant. But still, that is just going to be one field that applies to all line items, and that's going to be unique per line item. So it would be hard to manage. I could see it happening in Creator. You could easily customize that variant list based on the product selected in Creator, but in the CRM, that's not going to be easily done.
Oh yeah, because you can't edit the product's subform. You can't edit the line item subform on like CRM
quotes.
Sales.
You can add
right?
a couple custom fields, but not to the same amount that you can customize like a subform.
Can you add a lookup field?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
not sure either.
I think they just added that. I think we just covered that on the CRM Zen show recently. Maybe. Anyway, BC, we gave you a ton to think about there. I'm not sure we answered it, but hey, there's 9 different ways you can go.
You also gave us a ton to think about there.
Exactly. All right, moving on to our next question.
This comes from Roseanne Larson on Club Z. She posted this question saying, I'm putting together our workflows into Zoho projects. We do digitization of large archives, and our projects involve numerous people and departments. I would love to see some examples of how other people have used Zoho projects' blueprints and how tasks are best handed from one person to another, if anyone has learned or has some lessons to share. So when it comes to, just like in the CRM, blueprints work fantastic if you have a very well-defined and explicit process that records always move from this stage to this stage and are owned by this person and then that person. And in that case, blueprints work fantastically. There's a couple of other good things about blueprints that you can set like certain fields to be like mandatory to fill in or refill in when you're switching from one transition to another. So like, let's say you have a task that you have a blueprint on it where you've got to press a button to say like submit for approval, right? To move from in progress to waiting for approval or something like that. Then if you want people to like if people are going to like assign owners, you can have like owner specified as like a field that needs to be refilled in, so that when somebody goes to transition that to submit for approval, they then say, well, who am I sending this to? Which would be a nice way to, hand off those tasks. Similarly, if you have things pretty well defined, you could create some task automations that on the update of a status to a certain type of status, that the owner automatically gets a field update to a certain kind of owner. You could do further custom scripting if you need to get into like any like round robining or stuff like that. And then I think what another great thing would be if you kind of have like a template of like different phases that you're always going through. I would think if you were to add like date fields, right, for like when each phase gets completed or something, and then you could say, all right, if person X changes the status to complete, then stamp this phase date field with this phase got finished, And then also you could say, oh, just reopen it back up and then change the owner to somebody else if they're supposed to then go through it, or whatever else
seen a lot of people
might be.
What I've seen a lot of people do as well is not really hand tasks between different people in departments, right? Because you're going to create this thing as a template first, right? And so like an example would be like kind of in an applied sense. Let's say that you are a home installer of solar, right? And you need someone to do a site survey, and then the engineers need to make the, build plan, and then we need to hand it back to the operations team to do it. Like for me, those would be 3 tasks, right? So I'd have a task for complete the site survey, and that's assigned to the person or team that does those. Now there is where you might want a blueprint, right? Because you'd be able to say to complete a site survey task, you need to check this box, you need to upload this file or attachment, right? And so on. But then have those secondary tasks be dependent on the first, right? And so within these projects, you can create task dependencies. We have some videos on this on the channel that basically say we can't start on task 2 until task 1 is done. And so I would think about making the task more discrete and not handing them off, instead creating multiple tasks and linking them with dependencies, right? And I think that's just what I've seen end up being the more commonly used solution there.
Yeah, in my experience, blueprints are great, but they are a little bit too restrictive if you plan your entire project using a blueprint. They work best if you kind of break them up into small chunks and have multiple blueprints, maybe running within a task or on the project at a large. Basically just quick little updates that move you from one state to the next state and then kind of get you out of that. And then like you were saying, Tyler, I agree. Having task dependencies and hierarchies within tasks is probably the best way to go with that. And then you can schedule them out, show them on a Gantt chart, and manage it that way.
If something gets overdue, the following task will also show as starting later, right? So you get kind of a lot of baked in value when you look at task dependencies.
Mm-hmm.
This is from SACTA M1200. Hopefully I got that right. This is actually on our Zoho project's full product tutorial. Essentially, the question here is looking at the integration from CRM to projects. Essentially, is there any way to make a deal in CRM become a milestone in a project? Use case is that we want to have a single project for each account or contact. And then as we win new deals over time, we can kick off new like milestones or sections in that project. This is one that we kind of talked about a little bit internally. So I'm going to give you opinion first on this. What you're asking for is likely technically possible, right, guys? I mean, if you win a deal, you could get the project associated to the related account. Based on the type of deal, you kind of hard code like a milestone creation into that project. But you should consider just creating a project for each of these deals that you're winning. Inside of Zoho projects, things are used best against templates, and they're used best for projects have like a start and an end. And so as we continue to bolt stuff onto projects, some of the reporting starts to kind of fall apart, at least inside the tool. You can always still parse things back out inside of Zoho Analytics. But really, like as a general rule of thumb, the idea of having like that one project that goes forever with a client, it just kind of doesn't work perfectly inside of projects over time. It's a little more designed to be start and finished for like a discrete activity for that client.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of tried this in projects ourselves. I don't know if we actually tried creating separate milestones, but eventually we led to creating a deal for every engagement type. So for any one of our accounts, our clients, we have a Zoho consulting deal, or we have a Zoho creator deal, or a finance deal. And those are tracked separately, where you can add tasks, manage the team accordingly, and then you have a deal owner that's responsible for that deal. So it's just, I think it's a lot easier to track. And all of these projects still link to the account, and you can still go to the account and follow up on it. But having separate deals, I think, is easiest and easier to tackle, easier to digest.
Yeah. Alrighty, I think I'm back to back on this one. So this is actually a follow-up question. So George's asking why you guys are amazing. I'm doing a hair flip. You can't see me on the screen, but I'm blushing. Can you guys also answer my follow-up question regarding sharing notes with a non-family contact, so a CPA or realtor? So if you watched last week, this is a follow-up for the question around spouses. So we've got 2 spouses in the system. I take a note on one spouse. I'd love for it to show up on the other. And what we gave as a response is, yes, technically possible, but probably a better idea to nest them under an account, which you could even rename for like households, and then see all the notes roll up into that record. Because now it's also going to work for email, it's going to work for calls and tasks and all those things. Now, in this case, it's kind of the follow-up. Well, how could we make that work if there was a non-family contact, right, who could be like a CPA, a real estate agent? And then you'd also have to keep in mind, right, that this CPA could work with many different households, right? So we wouldn't really be able to nest it under that same like account record to get the roll-up to work. I was thinking it'd have to be like a deal, right, guys? Like you'd have to have like, but even then it's not going to be perfect. But if you had like a deal for someone at that household and we linked the CPA to the deal, you could at least see the list of all the deals that CPA is a part of. Now, the notes aren't going to roll up, right? They're going to roll up through kind of the standard hierarchy, which would probably be your client in this case, rather than the CPA themselves. But I think that would be really the only way to tackle it. I mean, it just gets, you could say, you've got your contact name on a deal that goes to the client, then you have a CPA field and that goes to the CPA. You could write a workflow where when you leave a note on the deal, it copies itself to the CPA as just like another note, or you would need to custom code it and I think trigger it in Flow. But I don't know. It seems like the best way would be to stay super organized in deals and then kind of track it that way against the CPAs.
Yeah. Although one adjustment to what you said there, there's early access to the notes workflow triggerings, so you wouldn't necessarily have to use Zoho Flow.
Yeah,
you can still
and
create
I know that
workflow.
It's like somewhere on the roadmap eventually to be able to pull notes into Zoho Analytics as well, which then does kind of open the door for like a custom XML list. Now you're getting the notes on all the deals. Yeah, dare to dream. I'm a believer.
But you could already do a custom XML list.
Oh yeah, you're right, and just get the related notes.
Yeah. And just it's like, okay, I guess it just depends on I don't know how the CPA is being related to this household, right. Which I think goes back to
that they're linked on a deal or linked on the account. Yeah.
Yeah, you could create your own custom merge tag. If you say @CPA in the note, it's not actually going to do anything. But if you do @CPA, you could theoretically grab all of those notes and then throw that in an XML list. @realtor, @spouse. You just got to be careful you're not using or their unique merge tags, but theoretically it could be possible through a custom XML list.
So the simplest way, Tyler, what you're saying is use a deal, have a stripped down version of that deal, and use the related contacts list inside the deal, right?
Yeah, kind of add people there, track it that way. But yeah, if you're willing to do a little bit of development, I mean, you could, like Greg is saying, do the custom related list right now. They'll just need to be linked in a really consistent way, right? So you'd need like a lookup on the household record, or you need a lookup on the deal, and then you could kind of build your own custom view of this data. But it gets outside of.
If it's not for the notes, it becomes pretty easy, right? I mean, if it wasn't for the notes part of this, you could just do a lookup in the account of various people, have several lookup fields. You can pull them in. I think you can do a lookup in a subform now, so you could do it there. But
it's just that the notes roll up part. Yeah, it doesn't happen.
The
natively
notes part gets tricky.
I don't know.
Right. It would be nice to add. I've often thought the related list feature, the related contacts feature in deals would be great to have in an account in a contact, right? Just to have that natively in there where you can have, here's the relationship that we've got in these as well, because it sometimes can't apply outside a deal, especially to an account. So
yeah, like their role of that account.
Great. This next question comes from James Ho. This was on the last AZAAZ. This is basically talking about we were talking about Zoho Desk integrating with Zoho Campaigns previously. And he's asking here, how can I get this use case of essentially, I close a ticket, I want that contact to start receiving, a certain Zoho campaign. And the quick answer is that with the integration that we discussed, the marketplace extension for Zoho campaigns, there aren't any built-in automation actions with that extension. There's only manual operations that you can do where from within a ticket, you can add a contact to a particular mailing list or send or see what campaigns they've been a part of. But you can still definitely accomplish, this kind of automation. I would say just by trying to focus mostly on setting up your segments and inside of campaigns to use segments to trigger whether or not somebody enters a workflow, and then you can write if you are using Zoho, and then it just depends on where are your contact sources of truth. If you're primarily using Desk and then they're also syncing over to campaigns from Desk, then just update your Desk fields with a workflow rule on closing of a ticket that would update whatever necessary fields there are that you are also syncing over into campaigns, that if those happen, then now your contact enters into a segment that qualifies them to send them on this track for receiving these campaigns. If say you're using a field that doesn't get mapped over, then you could very easily create a flow that on close of a ticket, you find that contact, and then you can use the email address to find that same contact or add that contact to Zoho campaigns. And again, just update whatever campaigns fields there are to update that would qualify them for that workflow segment.
Sweet.
And there we go. One and done.
One and done.
Now I'm the one who's back to back. This one is from Jisami. This was in Club Z in regards to the last episode, saying, "Hi, your content about GPT and Click was helpful and easy to follow. Want to thank you for that." You're so welcome. We just noticed that the GPT bot we have in Click had strange responses. Is it possible that ClickBot is accessing an earlier version of ChatGPT? We have encountered similar scenarios with our own ClickBot. We have there's a couple of different theories going around. One is that because we only have one API key that's going off of, are sometimes the responses coming back maybe getting mixed up and accidentally going to the wrong user chat, and so you end up getting the answer to someone else's question. I think the other day, I think it was Josh. I think Josh asked ChatGPT, "Hey, give me a list of give me a list of US states or something. I don't know." And then ChatGPT responded with, "Well, here is the perfect skincare routine for you.
I was asking you questions.
Then you need to exfoliate."
Yeah, I was asking it questions about an Excel formula. I was asking it if it could pull a hyperlink out of a text box in a formula, and it totally understood my question. The first response was "Okay, so you're asking me if you can do this," and I'm like, "Yeah, perfect." And then I responded with a 10-step skincare routine, which was a good routine. I checked it off of my girlfriend, and she said it did look pretty great. We've had that too, just a little bit. It's got to be just that it's all going through one connection, right? To ChatGPT, we're just asking it a bunch of different questions,
probably
in the same thread.
Yeah. But I can say that if you head over to the code share forum of Club Z, we have recently put up. You did mention an earlier version of ChatGPT. We have now upgraded our ClickBot to the ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo language model, when previously we were on just regular 3.5, which was called DaVinci 003. Anyway, it's mostly the nice thing is that it's 1/10 of the cost of using the previous model that we had. So yeah, so if you want, go to Club Z and check out that latest post on the CodeShare forum for.
So it's even cheaper, Greg, because it was very inexpensive to begin with.
Yeah,
I mean, it was super cheap to begin
cheaper
with.
Now,
and it's turbo.
And the other, what's that?
It's turboed now.
Yeah, and it's turbo. It's so turbo, man. Turbo man. And the other thing that we added to the ClickBot code was you can actually add like a sort of like a background of like telling your bot, hey, listen, bot, look at me. You are a Zoho ClickBot, okay? You're a Zoho ClickBot. You're answering questions for Zenatta Consulting, and I also to ours. And you are also a great admirer of Greg, who is known for his quick wit and just being very handsome and very popular. So just you can sort of add like a context to your bot as well. If you guys ask,
people might think that Greg is joking, but I think he genuinely did add that.
You ask our Zenatta ChatGPT bot, what do you think of Greg?
Yeah, it gives all kinds of great response. I'm noticing the responses lately, Greg. They're so no, Greg is not joking. This is true.
Someone asked our ChatGPT bot, who is Greg? And it responded, Greg is the director of Zoho development at Zenatta Consulting. Accurate. He is known for his affable nature, technical prowess, and quick wit.
100%.
I want to keep going with that. So, Greg, you were showing me earlier today when we were looking through their API that you can also integrate through other OpenAI services like DALL-E, and I think there are a few listed on there. But could you also theoretically automate an image by chatting through Click? Could we set up a DALL-E connection as well to generate images?
Probably. Just give me enough time and
a budget,
Dr. Pepper, and I bet I could figure it out.
And for those of you that aren't familiar, if everybody knows of ChatGPT, but you don't know of DALL-E, which is spelled like Wally with a D, it basically is an art generator. And if you're watching this show on YouTube, not listening to it, you'll see various pieces of 1940s comic book style art. And that was all generated by DALL-E. Basically, Freddie popped the information in and it spat out those images. It does incredible art. I mean, if you've never played with it, it is insane the type of things you can ask it to generate. You can do it in the style of Picasso, do it in the style of Van Gogh, do it in the style of a Renaissance painter. You know, I mean, you can go on and on and on. Make it 8-bit art, and it pretty quick. You know, it would be interesting if that's available though, Greg. Because what I find with DALL-E is you have to hit that submit button about 30 times before it actually can generate, because it comes back with I'm busy. So maybe if you were paying for it, it wouldn't be busy. You never know. Raymond, after watching our webinar interview on SMS for Zoho CRM by Message Media, it was a tutorial that we did. If you're not familiar, Message Media used to be called Smooth Messenger, or the application was called Smooth Messenger, and it was sold to a company called Message Media, and they are basically our preferred vendor for integrating SMS into Zoho CRM. And he's asking, does Message Media have an iOS app? They do not, but their web app on your phone basically mimics anything you would do with mimics your basic, SMS type of application. So pretty straightforward. But if you haven't checked out that video, if you are looking at integrating any type of SMS into your CRM, we really recommend that one. It works exceptionally well.
All right, next one. Vaseem, after watching Getting Started with Zoho Creator Part 1, App and Form Creation, asks, can I sync Google Sheet data to Creator? Yes, technically you can. There is Google API that you would be able to access to sync, and technically you could do it. But you have to be very careful and very strict on those triggers and how you do it. My recommendation is to limit your sync to once a day, preferably when no one's accessing the Creator app and you can just do a bulk import to Creator, and keeping it a one-way push. I've noticed that you can bring data into Creator, but pushing it into Sheets can be sometimes wonky, and you might overwrite rows that you didn't want to overwrite because they're not necessarily records, they're rows that you're updating. So you have to be really careful. And whenever you're pushing your data from Google Sheet into Creator, there needs to be some sort of unique identifier, or if you plan on updating, there needs to be a unique identifier somewhere in one of those columns. Otherwise, just create new records using for each row. But really, I don't recommend doing a sync through Creator unless it's just a one-way daily import. Just be really careful on your triggers and how you plan to match everything up. But technically, it is possible. Just be careful.
I remember a long time ago, I had set up a sync from Google Sheets. It was ill-fated right out the gate, kind of from what you're talking about, because what I was doing was listening for updates to the sheet with Flow and then kind of like writing them into records. But there's all different types of ways that the Google API will turn that off. So if you add a column, that flow turns off. If there's an empty row anywhere, that flow turns off, right? Like, and you can't get the level of control that you need to say, only be writing this for specific types of updates. And see, I think Josh is dead on. Like, if this is something where like you get a data dump every day into a sheet and you want to pull it in, great, right? Scheduled function, pull it in. If there's updates, you'll need an email or an ID or something. But I would be very hesitant to go forward building anything where you've got triggers in the sheet on a one-off basis trying to do stuff in Creator. You're probably going to end up causing yourself more pain that way. Sweet. Alrighty. I think this is the second last one here. So this question here comes from Pope69, asked on the Zoho Forms full product overview video over on YouTube. So I'm having questions setting up the field rules. I have a hidden field, but when I try to set up conditions, it doesn't come up in the options. When the user presses yes, it's supposed to change the field from hidden to shown. They're calling out at about 14:53 in that video, but it's not bringing out the hidden field as an option. So this is one of those things in Zoho Forms that's super unclear when you are initially setting it up. So if you want the field to ever be able to show up, you can't mark it as a hidden field on the form itself, right? You leave it as a field that's available. Then you go into the field logic and you say, show that field if this other has a certain value. And that, in essence, hides it in all scenarios other than your field logic. You only ever want to have a field itself like hidden, meaning like the checkbox in that field itself marked as hidden, if it's like a system-filled field, right? Like you're going to sneak in UTM parameters for ad tracking, or you're putting an ID into it and you're emailing someone with like a pre-filled form. But so you want to leave all your fields unhidden on the form itself, and then everything should be driven with the field logic, and that should sort out your issue.
Yep. By the way, I believe that this is supposed to be from Macarius II of Alexandria. He was the 69th Pope of the Catholic Church. So I imagine that's who wrote this. And that would explain
traveling in time to
that would explain the username.
Yeah, thank God it's not a sexual reference or anything like that.
No.
I'm glad we clarified that. Good.
Yeah.
I want to get demonetized.
All right, and wrapping it up, we have a question from Mike, who over on Club Z says, working with connectors. Howdy, I'm using Zoho Sites as a customer portal for a client-facing tool. The issue I'm running into is that the default CRM integration is extremely lacking. It will only create a new contact, not in the database, and mark their source. Existing contacts are able to create an account, but short of a daily manual import, I can't figure out a way to mark the folks that already exist in our database when they sign up. I'm thinking the Deluge Zoho flow has got to have a better way of doing it, but I'm stuck. Alternative solutions and questions. Is there a better tool than sites for creating gated content? Is it possible to make Zoho sites sign in an embedded Zoho form? So guys, in looking at this, I mean, there's a couple of questions that he's got going here, but to me, I think the first one is I'd probably, depending on how you're gating things, I'd probably use WordPress. I think you're going to have better luck if you're just doing that
Generally
there. Then if you, generally. And if you're going to want to have a portal that's doing much more with CRM than CRM currently is doing with Zoho sites, you should use ZPortals. And we have that if you just go to YouTube, search for ZPortals. You'll find our whole video overview on that and how it will all tie together. From there, since ZPortals is going to directly have a two-way communication with the CRM, it seems like a lot of the various updates that you're wanting to make, you'd easily be able to make. You can do it through workflows. There's a whole bunch of ways you could do it. But I'm thinking just WordPress and Zoho sites, or not Zoho sites, and ZPortals, and away you go.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, if I'm ever presented with the use case, I want someone who's in my CRM to be able to log into my website and see stuff unique to them based on what I have in Zoho. ZPortals always where we start, right? Like, you've kind of got two options, I think, to do this right. We did look at Zoho sites, and from what I looked at, and I don't know, Greg, if you can speed Google, I did not see an API to add like a client user or portal user to sites. So you might just be DOA on that, and there's just not an automation. But generally speaking, I mean, we either do like a creator portal for a login. That's about like 5-10% of the time. 90 to 95% of the time, it ends up being ZPortals, because it's what, $50, $60 a month, Brett? And it's very likely going to cover 90% of what you're looking for, right? And you just turn it on and it works, right? Obviously, there's some configuration and setup. But yeah, I mean, I would think of going that way, just because you're just going to have to keep manually doing it if you do stick with Zoho sites. It's not to say they'll never add an API for that. Zoho adds new stuff all the time, but it doesn't seem like it's there now, and I've not seen any particular plan to add it.
And Zoho sites is solid. I mean, one of the things you'll find oftentimes why it can work for people is they want a very simple site. But if you're looking for the thing you do get with WordPress is there are literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of plugins. And anytime you're thinking about, boy, I sure wish I was able to do this, well, rather than have to go through a million different gyrations to make it happen, there's usually a free or extremely inexpensive plugin that's going to do it for you. And it's very inexpensive to host a WordPress site. You can usually do it for $10 a month.
What we've told people in the past too is like, so you want a simple site now, and Zoho sites might work, but you're going to want more later. Everyone always wants more later. You're going to want an events page with a sign up. You're going to want a calendar view of something. You're going to, there's just always going to be things that you're going to want, because you're going to have more and more ideas. And so picking a more robust platform, our website's on WordPress. Most of our clients are, so something to consider, I think.
All right, guys, that is going to wrap up another fabulous issue of AZAAZ.
Oh, I do want to, before we go to the end screen, say that, yes, you can add an additional lookup field to your line items on your sales orders in the CRM. That was the thing we weren't quite sure about. So
we could edit that. Maybe we could edit that back in to that previous part. It'll just be like a pop in of Greg.
No. Even better. Can we edit into the original question? Hey, they figured this out, but it's at the end of the video. You got to watch the whole thing.
A little overlay.
There you go.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we're like
all right,
one of those
everybody. Hey, thanks
blogs that doesn't get to the recipe until like the bottom, like foot of the page.
Are we done with our banter? That's it. No more banter. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to chat with us, you can head over to zenatta.com and click on Book a Meeting.
On our website is where you'll find complete episodes of our podcast, The CRM Zen Show, where we cover all the news in the world of Zoho every single week. Please do subscribe to our newsletter if you'd like that news delivered every Monday morning. And please do go ahead and like and subscribe to us here on YouTube, as well as your choice of podcast app. We'll see you next Wednesday for the next issue of AZAAZ.
Thanks for watching, everybody, and listening.